how to go from a law practice to full-time mediation or arbitration. In this video, we're going to talk about how you can transition from a litigation practice, law practice, and even employment to full-time mediation and arbitration. What are the most common questions that we get asked, and what are some of the things that you need to think about to be able to do this successfully? So let me just give you the summary in the beginning. Is it possible to do this? And the short answer is yes, of course it is possible. We have worked with plenty of clients that have completed this journey from an active law practice to full-time mediation and arbitration, and also practitioners who have done this from employment to full-time mediation arbitration. So it's absolutely possible. And in fact, it's not an entirely bad idea to make the transition in this fashion, because if you're employed, if you have a law practice, litigation practice, it means that you have a steady paycheck. And that consequently means that you're not going to be in a rush to make this work, because building a mediation and arbitration practice does take time, and you don't want to be pressed for making revenue. If you are patient and you have the capability of allowing things to take its course, you're also going to be more effective in general with the relationship building and the visibility building, two of the key areas for being successful. So let's look at some of the most common questions that we get asked and answer them for you. So the first question is, will it affect your brand and visibility? And is yes, of course it will. It's much better to have a uniform visibility and narrative in all communication and networking. Having this uniform visibility and communication makes it much easier for you, obviously, but more importantly, it's much easier for the recipients of your engagement to understand what you are all about. So they will be much more receptive to engage with you, and it will be easier for them to speak of you because they understand what services you provide and who you are, because your messaging makes sense and it is coherent. So in the best of worlds, we would only have this coherent narrative and visibility, but most of us don't operate under perfect conditions. So it means that if you're trying to transition from employment, if you're trying to transition from an active law practice to full-time mediation arbitration, you're going to have to make compromises. And making these compromises does not prevent you from being successful. It's absolutely doable. Like I said, we've worked with plenty of clients that have completed this journey, and we are working with clients currently that are on the way of completing this journey. And what you'll find is, even later in your business development journey, you're going to be interested in trying out new services. You're going to be interested in approaching new target audiences. And this is also the kind of trial and error that you're going to start off with. So you may have multiple types of communication and multiple types of visibility. So your positioning may still come to vary in the future. So how do you best do this then? Well, that could be a video in itself, but it all comes down to having crisp and clear communication and visibility for your intended target audience. And if you're interested in learning more about how to do this, then you should watch some of our previous videos and also some of the playlists that we have, because that will walk you through how you can better understand who it is that you're providing your services to, what makes them tick. And if you understand that, you're going to be able to communicate with them much more effectively. Another very common question is, will other attorneys give me business? And again, the short answer is yes. Of course they will. There's naturally going to be attorneys that aren't open to giving you business because you're still actively working for your own firm or someone else's firm. But a sufficient number will generally be open to providing you with business. And that number is going to be sufficient for you to make the transition that you're interested in making. You may actually find yourself getting questions about this, because many attorneys that are at the later stages of their careers are interested in transitioning into roles as mediators and arbitrators. And they have themselves perhaps already started taking the steps towards this. So they're going to be curious about you and your efforts. Now, how successful you are with this obviously comes down to a number of different factors, but you always want to make sure that you have crisp and clear communication, as I mentioned on the previous slides, so that your recipients understand who you are, what services you provide, and the kind of plans that you have, because you need to make them comfortable with you so that they will put you forward for cases. You may also have to be able to address conflicts of interest very clearly. And if you've already prepared for these types of questions and your communication, it's going to be much easier for you to do that on the spot when you're getting asked. Here's another common question. How much time will it take for me on a day-to-day basis? Well, the answer is not going to be a whole lot different than just building a mediation arbitration practice in general. It's not a question of how much time and effort you put in during shorter periods. It's more a question of how much time you put in over prolonged periods of time. And it's really about continuous incremental effort. So it's generally much more effective for you to do 30 minutes per day during the course of the business week rather than spend 6 hours on a Sunday doing it. But having said that, 6 hours on a Sunday, it's generally better than 0 hours during the work week. So the amount of time that you need to spend per day will obviously vary, but the more time you spend, the better. So obviously, if you're able to allocate time to this every single day, it's going to be much more effective than if you're just able to do it occasionally. Just to give you a number, if you spend about 30 minutes per day doing this, then you're going to be doing pretty well. But that means 30 minutes per day consistently, 5 days per week, preferably 7 days per week, and doing that over prolonged periods of time. Question 4. So does all of this mean that you're going to have to be a one-man band or a one-woman band? Well, of course not. You'd be surprised, but most of our clients don't love business development. It only becomes fun when you start doing well with it. And that tends to happen after you've gone through the initial period of business development. And on a more serious note, obviously our clients are busy. And if you have a full-time employment and you run an active law practice, it goes without saying that you're going to have a day job, and that will limit the amount of time and energy that you can put into building your mediation and arbitration practice. This is why when we work with our clients, we show them how they can do everything themselves if that's something that they prefer, but we also show them how they can use other people to help them with a lot of the business development. And we also show them how they can find and manage such individuals just to make it very easy for them. Doing this means that you're going to be able to operate much more efficiently and much more effectively, because you're going to be able to ensure that work gets done on a consistent basis, and it's not entirely up to you having the time and energy to do it. Now, obviously, there's absolutely no requirement to do this. You're going to be perfectly fine. Again, we have plenty of clients that do everything themselves and they are able to do it well. We'll see this as an option that could make your life easier. But let's look at question 5. How long will it take for you to make this transition? Well, again, it is really impossible to say, but there are a few different factors that we've seen time and time again that will help determine how quickly this transition will happen for you. So let's divide this into 2 sets of 3. So the first set would be, it comes down to how much time you put into this, the quality of the work that you put into it, and the consistency of the work. We touched upon all of these different areas earlier in this video. So you want to make sure that you focus on doing the right type of work. And this is not as obvious as it may seem, because it's very different building a law practice compared to building a mediation arbitration practice. If you're interested in learning more about the right building blocks, then have a look at some of our previous videos. I'm going to link to them down here in the comment section and in the description section so that you can access it quickly. And remember, it's not about doing bulk effort. It's about putting in incremental efforts continuously over time. That's going to ensure that you're successful with your business development efforts. So those are the first 3 points. Now, the second set comes down to the nature of the cases that you work on. So if you are getting direct referrals from other attorneys, then that's usually the best position to be in, because you own the relationships, and actively making a choice to put you forward for cases, you're going to be able to influence this area much easier than in several of the other cases that I'm going to be mentioning. So that's number 1. If you're getting direct referrals, that is absolutely gold. That's really the best position that you can be in. Now, the second option is that you're getting referrals from panels and agencies. That's usually the starting point, because you are going to have to get cases under your belt. Usually the easiest way to doing that is through court-appointed work and through pro bono work and through reduced fee work. So that's great because it gives you experience, gives you exposure. It gives you a lot of hopefully settled cases that you can use for joining other panels later on. But in this case, you're not directly influencing the choice of you as a mediator or arbitrator for the majority of the cases. And that means that you're not able to control it as easy as if you're getting direct referrals from attorneys. The third case is obviously if you're not getting any cases at all today. That means that you're going to have to start out. So in terms of ranking, direct referrals from attorneys is generally the best because you're going to be able to get more cases much more easily. Second one would be if you're getting cases from panels, you're not directly able to influence that, but given that you have exposure, there's work that you can do to help get more cases. And then finally, if you're just starting out, you're going to have to start building out your network and your experience, and it will generally take longer. So if you are just starting out, then this really is the trajectory that you should try to focus on. Get the first few cases, get on panels, and then start trying to get direct referrals. You don't necessarily have to do it in that order, but it's generally easier to implement it in that order. The final question is, when should you take the plunge? And remember here, there are plenty of mediators and arbitrators that are running active law practices, and they're perfectly fine with that. You can do that if you want to, but this presentation is about how you make the transition to full-time work. So in that context, making that plunge and taking the step is something that you're going to have to do sooner or later. You're not always going to be able to stand with one foot into employment and an active law practice and the other foot into your mediation arbitration practice. You will very unlikely be able to build out your practice the way you want to if you don't commit 100%. And for many of the neutrals that we work with and have worked with in the past, taking this step generally makes it easier for them to focus all their energy and attention on this, and it tends to produce better results when they do. All seems obvious, right? But not always so easy to do. The main benefits here are obviously that you're just going to have one single thing to focus on. And when you do, it also means that the recipients of your communication and your engagement find it much more easy to grasp what you are all about. And it's going to make it easier for them to do business with you, or at least to be open to doing business with you. And you're going to make it easier for them to speak of you because they will get, again, what you're all about and the services that you provide. Okay, so that was it. I just want to leave you with some final advice. The first thing is, if you're unable to get any cases at all as an employee or when you're running your law practice, don't expect to be able to do so when you have quit and gone full-time into mediation and arbitration. Even though it may be easier, it will not be as easy as you think. Expect some resistance and some thresholds that you would have to get over, and expect to do the hard work because you're still going to have to do that later on anyway. And I already mentioned this, but if you're on this journey, then make sure that you try to get as much experience and exposure as possible. Join those court-appointed panels so that you get more case experience. And finally, focus on engaging with the people that will be providing you with business. It's absolutely fine to network and engage with other neutrals, but that should generally be from an information gathering point of view so that you can become a better mediator or arbitrator. Don't expect them to provide you with cases. And this may seem quite obvious, but we see this time and time again, that obviously it's a little bit more safe to engage with your peers rather than taking a step outside your comfort zone and start engaging with the people that actually will hire you. So that's everything that I had for you in this video. I hope you found it useful. If you did, then please make sure that you hit that like button and the subscribe button. And if you have any suggestions for topics that I should cover in future videos, then put that in the comments section. We love to hear from you. All right, thanks very much for listening in, and see you in the next one.